I think we're ready to start. So, first of all, thank you very much for attending my session today during the DNN Connect. Let's see that we're going to start the timer. That will be very helpful. So this session today is about an upcoming enterprise e-commerce solution which is going to use .NET as one of the possible front-end systems. But before I dig into the overall presentation deck, I want to give a short introduction of myself. So the company itself is pretty new. So the company for the software development got founded last month. We are into business starting May 1st. But I'm working with a .NET New and the .NET New framework for about 7 years now. So pretty confident about this. And from an e-commerce perspective, I don't know who already knows about a product called ASP.NET Storefront. There had been a DNN implementation available in the past for ASP.NET Storefront, and the company I formerly worked with was one of the distributors for Germany for that product solution. So what's the current situation for enterprise e-commerce environments? The interesting thing is that you already know that in an ideal world, we would like to have all the data in a single data source, create a shopping solution, create revenue, and move forward. But is this really the case in an enterprise environment? Not necessarily. The thing is that, especially in an enterprise environment, we do have complex situations, data coming from various sources, workflows are in place, price calculations, customer-related price calculations, and so on. So every business is different. That's the reason why there is not only one solution fits all of the requirements approach. So as an implementer, we all know that getting an enterprise into the e-commerce world is not that easy. At the same time, we do have business data that is already available. So customers that already utilize an enterprise resource planning system or any other sort of software solution where product data is already available is not very keen in implementing a software solution where they are required to transfer or to enter the product data a second or even a third time. At the same time, a lot of, or some of the business processes are already automated in some way, and you do not want to spend the overall effort and money to create the automated processes in a new software solution again, because it's a tough thing to keep those two implementations for the same approach in sync. And additional IT systems at a level of discontinuity in the data flow. This means that when we're going to synchronize or connect any sort of data, at some point the data connections break. We already know that synchronizations work fine for a certain amount of time, and at some point in time, I think the data sources get out of sync. And this real e-commerce world situation leads to a lot of manual work, and the most important thing, to high cost. So the enterprise implementations of e-commerce solutions are facing the issue that the overall project costs for e-commerce implementations are just too high and take too long, because as you know that e-commerce solution need to be implemented in a very short time, because from a competitive perspective, somebody who's going to sell stuff wants to be on the internet selling the stuff in a very short time. As I already mentioned, we do have a lot of internal data sources available, customer relation management systems, ERP data, existing catalogs, price table. At the same time, we are very keen in consuming multiple external data sources from additional vendors that provide data to our product, to the customers' data space, and tech stuff, rebate lists are need to be consumed as well. The hosting scenarios need to take into account as well, because not necessarily all customers that want to have an e-commerce solution are hosting their own on-premise service. So you're facing the fact that the hosting scenarios are on-prem, hosted, private cloud, public cloud, and anything in between. The target scenarios vary as well. So some customers just want to have some sort of a catalog that might be password protected in a B2B scenario. They want to have proper workshops. They want to have their product base connected to point of sale systems, so where even the cashier system is connected to the same database environment, so that end customers can track their orders and the stuff that they have bought in a shop, even see in their online profile. And at the same time, we have shopping apps that are targeted to the various mobile platforms. What are the challenges between the business and the e-commerce software requirements? So the business requirements normally is in the situation where the catalog model does not match the business requirements. This means that the data available does not fit the e-commerce solution itself. So it needs to be transferred, manipulated in some way that it fits the data format required for an e-commerce solution that you want to implement. Real-world pricing is often more complicated than simple pricing models. So if you only sell a single product with a fixed price, that's an easy example. But if you do have price lists, pricing tables, dedicated price lists per customer, that's not easy to implement by default. At the same time, so customer data is already in a software solution available, so all the contact data, therefore you do not want to create an additional user database that needs to be maintained by the end users, because you want to have the custom data in your primary business software solution and not in your front end. For example, if somebody wants to register at your website and you do have a B2B solution, you need to verify that all the legal documents have been presented first, because before you're going to activate a user account in your e-commerce solution. This leads to the fact that you require a lot of customization. In the example that I mentioned before, so ASP.NET Storefront, in all of the implementation that we've done in the past, it was required to use a source code license, and we had to extend, manipulate, or even fix the source code itself, and any of the implementation in this case was then disconnected from any upcoming or any future software releases, because in this case the customer would have to make the changes again, and none of our customers was very keen on moving to a new software version just because of the effort required to implement the changes again. So, yeah, inappropriate project timelines. Nobody wants to have an implementation timeline that takes 12 months. Doesn't make any sense, because especially if you're talking about how easy it is and how quickly the e-commerce solution can be implemented. All the customers read about the fact how easy it is to move to the cloud, how easy it is to migrate. All the marketing material provided by the major cloud providers and the major software vendors is how easy it is. This can quickly be done. No customization needed. From my perspective, it's just a plain lie. Yeah, and the high implementation cost, or depending on, just plain impossible. That's the reason why we developed a new software solution. This is a middleware solution which is going to utilize .NET U as one of the possible front ends. And this is an e-commerce development platform which provides the possibility to create plugins to match individual requirements. It's highly customizable, easy to use, scalable, does have integrated e-commerce, otherwise it wouldn't be an e-commerce development platform. and is an order processing solution. The interesting thing is that the customization can be done by any developer that is or knows about .NET. So it's Microsoft, based on Microsoft platform on the current .NET framework 4.5, and runs as a middleware solution. Going to show the architecture model in a minute. We do have a large set of pre-built extensions available as plugins, and then they are installable at runtime, which is very important because you can add, enable, disable plugins without any downtime to your existing productive environment. What's the overall layout? So we do have the application integration, which in this case is the outer layer of the platform itself, which is then either DNN, a client API for any website that you that is already in use, so that you can connect to the platform itself using HTML and JavaScript. We can connect to the point of sale system using WPF or any other WCF endpoint REST. So we have the connection to the e-commerce platform is possibly using standard protocol. So there's no proprietary implementation protocol in use. Next step is the client API, the Nikos One API itself. And then you have additional plugins which can be self-developed for any additional e-commerce functionality that is required. So either if it's a payment plugin, so depending on the payment provider that you're going to choose, if you want to have a single payment provider, configure a backup payment provider for single month fails, the add to cart functionality or any other plugin that you require. So plugins are not only used for front-end connectivity, but for back-end connectivity as well. So the reason is, so the contrast is a slightly tricky on this one, but the plugins, pretty readable here, connect to any of the data sources. So you can have data already available in Oracle, MySQL, or any other data sources. And you can use various front ends to connect to the middleware solution. And .NET is, as mentioned, one of those. But why should you use an enterprise e-commerce solution? Because the integration into the existing IT infrastructure is one of the benefits, because to connect to your existing infrastructure, you only have to configure your plugins. You have to only quote unquote, to configure your stuff. So the configuration is done using Visual Studio, which, from an integration perspective, a .NET developer is pretty used to. And the configuration itself is an XML file, because by default, the commerce solution even does not know what a product is. Sounds strange, but the simple thing is, if you're going to create the configuration of your product, as an example, you can fetch the required data of your product, so the title, the description fields, even the description in various languages from different data sources, depending on your current infrastructure. If you do not have existing data sources like ERP systems, you can utilize either the same SQL server with a dedicated database, or just even add a default table schema into the DNN database. So because of the fact that all of the customer environments are totally different, this solution fits, from my perspective today, I would say, into all of the customer environments. If there's something missing, you just have to provide a plugin. You do not have to recompile or redevelop the overall e-commerce solution itself. You just add an additional plugin. This is the important part, because no code modifications are needed, and we're not going to synchronize anything. So all of the requests issued by the front end are passed through the middle tier to the data source itself. Depending on the overall performance of the backend system, it might be required to have some sort of caching. That's a valid point, but we're not going to synchronize anything. Our experience in the past has been that synchronization itself is a major point of failure, and it needs to be avoided in any case. Yeah, this is an example that I already mentioned. So you have some sort of data source aggregation, because data can be fetched from various data sources to create your single entity that you wanted to display and use in your front end. Because the data itself that needs to be displayed on a web page is totally different compared to a cashier functionality in a point of sale system, or even in a web app. You only have to fetch the data that you want to display, just to avoid additional overutilization of bandwidth. Do not transfer any unnecessary data. Again, we do not need any code modifications, and we do not need any synchronizations. So in this case, UI independent. I stress this slightly, so we are targeting DNN as the primary platform because this is a .NET platform and stuff. You see SharePoint here? Yes, we want to implement this product with SharePoint as well. Even though that a SharePoint e-commerce solution is primarily targeting to internal procurement system, not necessarily to external ones, but this is the overall goal. The functionality is independent from the front-end technology, so smartphone, as you already know that, for example, as Microsoft developers, the Windows Phone platform is slightly orphaned when it comes to application development. Most of the shop vendors provide some sort of application for the Android or the iDevice world, but not necessarily for Windows phones or Windows tablets. This is one of the things that we provide a default template, to get your e-commerce shop solution out to all of 3 major platforms. It's independent from the front-end development platform. This means as long as your front-end is capable of implementing code to issue REST calls back to the middleware solution, you can implement this e-commerce solution. This is a benefit. So I already mentioned this, is that you can use various front ends simultaneously to the middleware, and the front end is only used as a facade layer because we are going to implement especially from a .NET perspective, only the functionality within .NET that is absolutely required to run properly within .NET. Any HTML code, for example, that is required to be rendered by .NET is created in the middleware and then transferred to the facade module in .NET. And all front ends share the same central administration, so there's no need that you have this administration module in .NET only for this type of client, because you have other clients as well and you want to have a single administration point for your e-commerce. Customizable from an input and output data format perspective, because we are using we are using common standard protocols, formats, and semantics. It can easily be transferred. So the stuff that we're reading and writing back into the backend systems can be customizable. So it's going to meet any requirements that is required by the backend systems, because some of the extensions, for example, in Navision, do require fixed values and such. All the stuff is, in this case, configurable and easy to use and easy adaptable. Yeah, infrastructure independent operation means that because we are relying on web services and calls, we do not care, and there's no requirement to have a single dedicated server on-premise. You can even have a distributed environment where your website itself is running on different systems in a different environment than your middleware solution. The only thing that you have to provide is connectivity, right? And the decision on if you identify the connectivity between the various environments as a single point of failure, that's up to you and up to the customer. You know, the overall approach on how to provide redundancy, that's far off topic for this approach. Oh, I think the important thing is, get back to this, that the e-commerce platform can run as a web application inside the Internet Information Services, as a Windows service, or even as an autonomous application, because it's not the only dependency is that we're running on a proper Windows server environment currently, but it depends on, so there's no requirements, let's say, issue that we are facing if you want to install some sort of IIS integration on a server that is currently running an installation of SharePoint, where we already know that, you know, it comes to various issues depending on the registered DLLs. We can avoid this by running this as a Windows service. We just need to provide the web service endpoints to the front end and to the back end. Standalone versus embedded, so there's no requirement to set up a second web shop website in parallel to your existing company website. So you can do either of the both depending on the requirements by the customer. And again, in both cases, it's independent from the development platform. Again, administrator developer friendly, complete configuration is scriptable, so it's easy to back up, easy to save, easy to maintain. If the customer does have a proper change management in place, all of the configurations can properly be documented and can even be tested in the development and a test evaluation environment and then placed into production. So then they are easily transferable. It's integrated to Visual Studio, and we are utilizing the Visual Studio's workflow editor. So any workflow implementation within the middleware solution is based on the Microsoft current workflow engine. Now that we've talked about a lot about enterprise e-commerce, the question that already arises is, you know, what about .NU? I mentioned this, that .NU is only using or providing modules that use .NU as a facade. The solution comes with 3 different versions. So the community edition is going to be reasonably priced, whatever that is. But it comes at no cost, but we are talking about a 2-digit euro pricing. So that's quite reasonable. There are some limitations to the community edition. So, for example, all the redundancy functionality or even, let's say, exotic data sources cannot be connected. So it comes primarily with an SQL data connector, which in most situations fit the requirements because .NU is utilizing SQL anyway. Multi-language, yeah, it can be extended by additional plugins. So plugins are sold on a per plugin basis or per plugin pricing. So you can then even start with a community edition, and then you can, as the business grows and the requirements grow, just extend the license, add additional plugins. There's no requirement to uninstall, install a new or a higher version or so. It's just done by adding plugins, adding additional license key, and you're done. As an example, even though that, maybe it's going to work. So .NU is connecting using REST, and WCF is not necessarily readable, but it's better readable in the distributed PowerPoint presentation that's going to be shared after the conference. And as you see, .NU is only one of the front ends connecting via REST or WCF, depending on how you want to implement this to the commerce platform. The reason why I have no fancy demo and I do not want to bother you with a longer session than a 30-minute session is, it's going to be available by the end of Q3 this year. If you're interested in this product and want to stay connected and get any additional updates, just go to dnn-connect.nikos1.eu. See you, 24 minutes. Questions? If there are any.
Do you have any demo?
No, I already mentioned. I would like to, but actually the demo would have required to have a proper internet access. But I would have avoided to do so because in this case I'm putting the shame onto the developer side of things because they were not ready, but the easiest thing to do.
The solution is that a separate ASP.NET application which you have to install on the server, or is it something that runs on your servers?
So it's a separate server that can run on-premise by you, but you're going to provide a hosted service as well, because this is the interesting thing for small and medium-sized companies that do not have a service on their own on-premise and that are not very keen in running virtualized servers in the cloud from a cost perspective. So we are providing an SM for small and medium-sized businesses hosted solution as well. So that's the reason why. So it's more or less the same approach that as a larger customer or running this software solution, having let's say a private cloud environment as an example, they can run this application on their virtualized service in a private cloud and move it as they like from a private to the public cloud and vice versa. And this is more or less the same approach that we are then going to run just for the customer on a fixed pricing, because as a small and medium-sized company, you're interested in knowing how much this is going to cost me on a per month basis. You do not want to have variable pricing per month. It doesn't make any sense. Additional questions?
I think you're taking advantage of social features. So, for example, you web social, you use the social features community.
Because the community features are currently part of the front end itself. It's part of the front end. If you want to then create some sort of dependency between the products that you're going to sell and the social functionality with the front end, it's up to configuring the entity object between the front end and the product or the information that you use to sell. So it's about the entity relationship that is absolutely configurable. So I cannot say that I'm going to utilize or take advantage of feature X, Y, Z of the front end. It depends on the configuration. So you can start with selling your product and then adding additional dependencies at a later time.
Will that be one of the plugins?
Pardon?
Will that be one of the plugins that you provide, perhaps the social features?
Currently not, to be honest.
What flavour of DNN platform or are you going to recommend that as being for
There is no general recommendation due to the fact that it depends on what customers you're talking about, because small and medium size are not necessarily keen in implementing eWork Social. And larger enterprises that already have an eWork Social implementation or let's say, they're currently in a decision process on making a decision on, do I want to implement eWork Social because of the social features, and I'm currently in the process on establishing or getting my new e-commerce approach to the web, or going to replace my existing e-commerce solution because I want to move to a newer software solution from a content management perspective. It's up to then what are the requirements of the customer and the project definition, the scope, right? Because any additional dependency on additional features extends the overall scope and the timeline, and therefore it's no general recommendation available.
How does client-side design is managed? Is it a rating system or?
It's not comparable to a templating system or the various templating approaches that we have in .NET U, but it's definitely CSS styled, so it integrates on the style set that you have in your front end currently in place. So some sort of.
I mean, how you manage, for example, the detailed product page, is that you have freedom to manage how?
Yeah, you do have the freedom, absolutely freedom to create the pages and the templates to be used. But the experience has shown that it doesn't make any sense from our perspective to provide let's say 20 different templates. So we are providing 2 or 3 because the customers in the past all stated that we are not interested in that our product page does look the same than the product page of competitor A, because of we are using template A, all the people know, okay, they're using software solution, whatever, not naming anybody. But the thing is that all the customers want to have the custom template anyway. So we are providing the default stuff, image, title, description, price, add to cart, off you go. And any additional stuff, so technical specs and any additional data that needs to be displayed is up to the product entity definition anyway. Because we do not necessarily know what data do you want to have to be displayed.
Yeah, but my question was how flexible is your solution on how to display this information when
it's fully customizable. There's nothing hidden in some sort of a source code or so. Any of the templates, any of the stuff that is required is exposed and fully customizable. So for 30-minute track, 31 minutes. Thanks.